I think first and foremost, let's take the science and the performance out of it for a second. I love what food does in bringing us all together. The second part is the ability to help people improve their performance, both physically, mentally, all the things. But ultimately, it's, to me, for everybody in life, not just athletes. It overall helps them support themselves. And then the third thing is, it's kind of cool, but I love storytelling. And there's so much you can learn about a culture, a country, traditions through food.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. I'm going to have to get through this introduction because I'm really excited to bring on this guest. But before we pop in here, if you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you haven't already, there is a discount code in the show notes for Break Barriers and Audacious. Please pop in there, check it out. Really appreciate all the support to date. That was probably the quickest intro that I've done for myself in a while because I'm terribly excited to get started here. Today's guest is Dan Churchill. He's the executive chef at the Osprey restaurant at the One Hotel Brooklyn Bridge and the CEO and founder of the production company, The Epic Table. Dan is a published author with his next book, Eat Like a Legend, launching May 21st. Pre-orders are now available. Go check them out right after this recording. His passion for vibrant and sustainable food has been seen on The Drew Barrymore Show, Good Morning America, Beat Bobby Flay, Chopped, and more. He's authored 3 cookbooks, Dude Food, The Healthy Cook, and Surfing the Menu, and shares more healthy eats on his website, danchurchill.com. His work has been seen in the New York Times, Men's Health, Women's Health, Bon Appetit, Eater, Delicious Magazine, The Infatuation, and many more. Dan, let's get straight to it, man. Thanks for joining me, brother.
Dude, thank you for the super warm introduction, bro. And then do we talk about the backstory of how you and I met, or how's that go down?
No, let's get into it. I mean, like, look, man, I've known who you are, but you know, you and I, we crossed paths right around mile 24, 25 of the New York City Marathon back in November. How'd that race go for you?
Dude, it was such an exceptional day. First and foremost, listeners, Bishoy was crushing it. Can I just say, like, he looked great. Mile 24, pretty much looked like he's about to walk down the catwalk during, what is it, Model Week or whatever it is in New York City. But man, it's always like the most heartwarming feeling when you're particularly in that scenario, like being in the health and wellness space, to have someone say, "Hey, Dan, love what you're doing." So Bishoy, I want to let you know, I want your listeners to know that for you to reach out, it meant so much to me, dude. So putting my arm on your shoulder and just being like, "Bro, we got this, and you're looking good." That was one of the highlights of my marathon, bro. So it was an awesome experience. I love that day. I already look forward to New York in November this year. Obviously, want to get through some summer vibes, but yeah, man, it was a great day.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that. And same, it was a highlight of my race as well. How many New Yorks have you run to date?
I think that was my fifth or sixth. Yeah, I think it's fifth New York marathon.
Got it. And where are you overall right now in terms of marathons?
I've done about 12. So it's funny though, when you're training for an ultra, you end up doing like an unsanctioned marathons. So I've done like 12 marathons, and then like plus all the unsanctioned just running around New York's that you end up doing it. You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy.
That's right. I mean, and you bring up ultras, and you know, I wasn't planning to go here off the bat, but I do recall you were recently training for a big race and things didn't go as you planned, right?
That's it, man. Yeah. So we all have our time where it's just not our day. But last year I competed in Leadville 100, which is a 100-mile ultra race that starts at 10,000 feet on a trail, and you go 50 miles out and you come 50 miles back all at once, and you're given 30 hours to do it. Unfortunately, I was 2 hours ahead of my projected time, and I succumbed to a grade 2 ATFL ligament damage on my ankle. So I rolled my ankle effectively. It was not good. So I ended up getting to 50 miles, but they pulled me from the race. And it was devastating, just due to the fact of how much, how many months of work you put into it. But I'll be coming back bigger and stronger from it.
What would that have been your biggest ultra to date?
Oh yeah, 100. I've done 100 Ks, which is 80 or 60 something miles. But dude, yeah, it's also as an event, Leadville is it's savage because it's one thing to do 100 miles. It's one thing to do 100 miles on trail. It's then nothing to do 100 miles trail starting at altitude because your the oxygen you take in is limited. Not to mention you're facing multiple different forms of climate conditions. Like some years it snows, is blistering hot, rains all in the same 30-hour span, and you're putting one foot in front of the other for a certain period of time. It's pretty interesting.
That's awesome. All right, let's dig in a little bit and just like learn a little bit about your background, right? I mean, I think from the outside, there's a lot to unfold here. You're a rock star chef, you're a rock star athlete, you're an overall just incredible human with regards to some of the messaging that you get out there. And I want to get beneath the surface to get to know you a little bit better, and give the audience an inside look into who you are and how you came to be where you are today. So tell us about where things got started off for you.
Yeah, look, I'll just say straight off the bat, man. Like, I'm assuming maybe people have already gathered this. I'm your everyday dude. Like, I'm a bloke you can say hello to, and nothing's different. So I'm no different from anyone else in our world to some degree. But
I mean, you're just slightly better at cooking. Can we just come
yeah,
in with
okay,
that?
all right,
Like,
okay.
okay, we'll go there.
I'll take that.
I won't give you. Yeah, I won't even talk about the marathons and all that because although you've done all that, like let's just admit and level you're a slightly better cook than most humans out there.
I will
But go
take
ahead.
that. I'll take that, bro. It's the best way to put it. It's classic Australian humbleness. So, as you guys can probably tell, my dude, I'm from Australia, so I'm not from America. I moved to America 8 years ago, and at the time, I was before America. I did a strength and conditioning master's degree, so I was in the performance space on the physical side, and then transitioned into performance nutrition, which a factor of my degree had. But I took on the approach that I saw a lot of nutritionists out there. A lot of them were starting to get into the athlete world. There was no chefs. I had been cooking for my friends, my family, and some athletes at a pretty basic level for some time, and then I realized there's a massive disconnect. Like I really say this, like you think about every single industry we're a part of, even like to just, I'm not here to diss the curriculum of schools, but sometimes like we all say this, when you get out into the workforce, it's when the practical knowledge comes, like when you apply everything, it's like it's completely different. So for me, when all these nutritionists were telling these athletes how to move their bodies and like what they should be doing cooking wise, or even like what food to put into their system, it wasn't connecting. And so when I started to actually teach cooking and like cook with them and all that kind of stuff, I was applying the information. So it stuck. It also developed this competitive edge. So I then realized, okay, I'm someone who relates to these players. I can relate to a lot of people, and my job can therefore be to help them nutritionally by just simply breaking down barriers when it comes to what foods to put into their body. So as a result, I loved the fact that I was cooking more, even though since I've been cooking from like 11 years old. At the time we're talking now, I was like 22, 21 years old. So I started to just, jump into kitchens for free at night and just learn from some chefs. And every single night I'd work in a different kitchen. So it wouldn't be the same chef, wouldn't be the same setup. So I'd be a sponge. And because I was working for free, they loved it. Two, I didn't have to essentially do, I didn't have to go to work. I could do anything I wanted the next day or whatever it was. So by day, I was a strength conditioning coach making my money. By night, I was learning. I was effectively doing an MBA in cooking very intentionally every single night. That built up my skill set. Eventually, one of the teams was like, "Okay, we need you to stay. We want you to be our sous chef." And I made a decision going, I could stay in the line I'm doing as a strength conditioning coach, and I was making decent money, or I can follow my passion and realize where the point of difference is, and no one's doing what this field was, and be this chef that could absolutely break the mold of complexity when it comes to what to put in your body to improve your performance. And so that's what I did. Um, I then just put my soul into learning how to be a better chef. I ended up, at the same time starting to create some content. I got picked up by, I self-published a cookbook, and then that did well. And then so I self-published another cookbook that did well. Got on a couple of TV shows in Australia. That then got me the contracts to move over to America on the visa I wanted, and then I had to start again. So like, this is something I definitely was naive for, but I think a lot of people neglect anyway. Like whenever you move countries, or even you move cities domestically in America, which I'm sure a lot of people have. We're in New York. Like there's a lot of things that people have to do to get here and then even stick around. So I think everyone can relate to that feeling of starting again, finding the community, finding friends, finding where to get toilet paper. I know it sounds weird, but in Australia, we have different stores to get that from. And that was like, kind of like, oh, okay. But to that was a good challenge and life lesson. But it just showed you can't apply the same format to a different audience and get the same results. So, to kind of a relatively long story short, after being here for about a year of just grinding, I started to see the benefit, and my brand started to, breach some barriers. And eventually over time, you saw me, I definitely saw the wins start to take shape. A lot of hard times, but I will say this, and I say this a lot. I simply put the reps in. It's like when you go to the gym, when you put the reps in consistently, if you go to the gym once a week and then maybe once a month, the reason why you don't develop, hypertrophy or strength gains. But if you get the reps in every single week, you see the adaptation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me ask you, growing up, what were some of your interests? Like, you know, pre all this happening?
Sport, food. I mean, I'm a young guy, so I'll leave the rest to that story to
Huh.
kind of take shape. But yeah, I love sport. I love working. I love being fit. Like I love fitness. Super into like family. I love my family. I love cooking. I love cooking, man. Like I wanted to play for my country as a in a rugby, but I'm so stoked that I didn't get to that because I now represent my country as a chef, and I like cooking is so much fun. I just went to Toronto on behalf of Tourism Australia to cook for my country to represent like what we do. And I'm like, wow, that's like that to me went full circle. So like, yeah, man, like that's stuff I'm interested in. I'm also pretty passionate about things like, well, interested in things like history and playing guitar, and I'm definitely a creative, but yeah, definitely sport, beach and cooking.
Well, one of the things that you pointed out in the beginning of this podcast, and I know it, and I'm glad that you pointed it out, right? Like you're just like everybody else, like you're human, and even the fact that the way that you and I reconnected, and that you're here right now, it was just like talking to a friend. It wasn't like anything more than that, and so it kind of makes me want to dig into the human side of what it is that you do, right? Like as much as you may enjoy the art of cooking or, the sport of cooking, I feel like there's more to it with regards to the fact that there's someone on the other end who's partaking in what it is that you're putting out there. Talk to me about the human connection behind whether it's the cookbooks or whether it's you at the restaurant, and the type of environment you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, dude. I think there's so much power in this, and I don't know the actual term, and forgive me, English was not my strong suit, let alone Australian. Um, but there's so much magic in this connection between food, people, community. And so when I look at the power of all those things, like I register pretty early on how important community is to me for not only my health but people around me. So like I rely on my community to one, check me, two, to they like if I don't see my friends, I know it's going to be an issue for me. If I don't see my partner, if I don't like, there's definitely things I need. But also like the restaurant food brings people together. right? And like that is something that's so important to me, man. Like there's no currency I can put that would be greater than just seeing friends at a table, whether I'm cooking or not, but just friends at a table. And that's why like I really love Thanksgiving. You know, those moments where everyone just stops and finally just sits and talks to each other, and it's so powerful. It's so unbelievably powerful. So for me, I want to help facilitate those moments. I also want to facilitate the ability for people to get the best out of their days by eating the right foods. I've seen firsthand athletes have better performances by the fact of what they put into their bodies. You know, I work with Whoop, and so I'm able to truly have a look at like HRV and the effects of food. And then maybe we can have a look at the effects of how food solely has on our sleep to then improve our next day performance. So yes, I think first and foremost, let's take the science and the performance out of it for a second. I love what food does in bringing us all together. The second part is the ability to help people improve their performance, both physically, mentally, all the things. But ultimately, it's to me, for everybody in life, not just athletes, it overall helps them support themselves. And then the third thing is, it's kind of cool, but I love storytelling. And there's so much you can learn about a culture, a country, traditions through food. So,
You
three
know,
things I love.
I love that. And speaking of storytelling, um, you've now written a couple of cookbooks. You got another book coming out now. Um, let's talk about that, like with regards to educating the audience here about how you even go about, putting together a cookbook, right? Like where do you even begin? Because I could speak to writing a real book, but a cookbook is a little bit different with regards to um, the overall objective and what it is that you're trying to get out there and keeping it on theme. And you have 3 now. So can you walk us through the evolution of maybe what you were thinking when you started the first one to the last one? Just so we can understand what goes behind that.
Yeah, man, it's a really good question. It's funny. The first one, I was like, because I self published the first two, which were then picked up by a publisher, right? So, writing a book is a product at the end of the day. The first one I created was called Dude Food. And it was simply, this is now I think about it, a lot of this was a fluke. But I was like, okay, I'm going to call it Dude Food, and I'm literally going to be just targeting dudes. Like, I want guys to cook more, right? Guys, girls love a guy can cook. Straight up. It's not to shock you, right? Okay, so maybe then I make the book appeal to a guy because cooking can be intimidating to a guy, right? If they learn how to cook and maybe had some sort of resource that would be approachable to them, then maybe I could find a way to get them to cook more. So simply put, everything from the book was very basic, fundamental. The scenarios, everything was to appeal to a guy. How to impress a girl had its own chapter. Sandwiching the gym, foods to have around the gym, everything. And then when I went to stores, I would think about, in fact, I don't think guys are going to walk into this store, but girls do. So whether you're a wife, a sister, a girlfriend, a grandma, whatever it is, I made sure that the people who were selling the book knew this is the best book to buy for a guy because guys are going to like the book once they get it, but they're never going to purchase it initially. And two, girls love to give a guy a
They're
book.
going to benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was how I kind of thought out. Now that I think about books, after doing that, I'm like, okay, cool. You got to think of who's your audience. Who are you going after with this book? So, and how do you want to position it? That's going to have a big point of difference. You also have to think about marketing. How are you going to market this book in a way that's going to appeal and also hit press? That's going to give you exposure in certain ways. So there's a number of different things to think about. But Soul Hardly is like one. With a cookbook, you got to look at foods that talk about something that's truly special to you that you can put on a plate that would be repeatable and actually achievable, in my opinion. So I made the Healthy Cook was a bit more of a healthy version of Dude Food. Then I had Surfing the Menu, which is essentially showcasing the cultures of Australia around the country. And then Eat Like a Legend is the book I've always wanted to do. It combines the appeal of guys and girls getting to cook delicious foods at home and easy to make with scenarios that are like built around, if you only have 12 minutes, this chapter's for you, right? With the understanding of nutrition, everything that I've learned. But most importantly, man, like the reason why I made this book was, yes, number one, I want people to cook more. But the reason behind it is I don't think we, at the end of the day, right now, put ourselves first anymore. And that was a huge thing I thought about when making this book. Why are we cooking less right now? Why are we so confused about nutrition? Why do we not really understand how to improve our performance? And why do we think we have to be an athlete to improve our performance? So, with all those key things, I was just like, okay, number one, I'm going to create a resource that makes people feel like they can put themselves first unselfishly to then overall improve their performance, to then look after everyone else around them. Number two, I'm going to make cooking much more achievable every single week now. So I'm going to find ways to have shortcuts that people actually apply and apply principles they would throughout their week on other matters to the same they do with cooking, so they can also benefit across their week. I also wanted people to understand truly, to break down this complexity of nutrition for themselves. Personalized, not nutrition, personalized cooking, right? I feel like that was always what I wanted. So from all this along the way, I've created principles at the front of the book. So I was like, okay, the book has to have principles. You got to in order to eat like a legend. So the whole concept is like how to eat like a legend, right? In order to eat like a legend, you have to sleep like one. You have to learn actually how to cook like one, and you have to be able to enact like one. So all these kind of principles apply. So then the chapters follow up these principles. Then within the chapters, you have the recipes that have little key things, such as, whether you're vegan or you're omnivorous, so you eat meat, this meal can be flexed. So I have two options. I have keys. I have like a scaling nutritional situation. So all these factors throughout the book to just make it the best resource. Why? Like at the end of the day, we've all seen the episode of that video, the movie Wolf of Wall Street. It's supply and demand, right? I want people to want this book because they are in demand of putting themselves first. And by cooking maybe once a week to start off with, they are saying, hey, I'm putting myself first. I'm going to look after me so that I can look after everybody else. And then that unripples a whole extra happiness of effects. But ultimately, dude, cooking is so good for you. It is so good for you. Not just
I feel like my
nutritionally.
wife's ears are just to the door right now, just listening
Dude,
to you right now.
right? But like, man, like people's like, they go, yeah, but it's hard. I'm like, cool. Did you tie a shoelace first time? They're like, well, no. I'm like, did you get the reps in? They're like, yeah. Can you tie a shoelace now? I'm like, yeah. Cool. So if you do a recipe, how often do you repeat that recipe? It's like, I don't. I'm like, that's my point. If you chose a recipe to repeat once a week for 3 weeks, I guarantee not only by the third week will you save time because you've learned all your things, you may have saved even more cash because you buy things once and you use it across 3 weeks. But most importantly, it's going to be delicious and you're going to look like a rock star coming out of it because you actually got the reps in. That's simply put.
You're spot on. And so, a question that I want to ask you, and this is a little bit of a hard question to answer, but like there's an art and a science to this, right? And I see you getting excited about both. But I want to ask, and maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. Like, which part excites you more? Is it the art or is it the science? Is it the science, when you talk about the whoop and you talk about, everything that you're able to learn about yourself and about the body and about, how it can react to certain behaviors? Or is it the art of, for instance, what you're building at the Osprey and creating and cultivating that menu?
Yeah, dude, I'm not going to try and be diplomatic here. I'm not. I'm just going to tell it how it is.
Tell it.
Art. Like
Love it.
I'm trusting my gut on this one. I love the preparation, the sizzle, like the fun, the flavor, like that whole thing to me is so exciting. Like it is. And I'm not going to say that the other part isn't as well, because to me, it's also, I just feel like the art is truly what I get lit up about, but I feel the responsibility of the science because I also enjoy it. But I feel like I'm the only one that I know of who can break down complexity and put it into a resource that people can understand and relate to. So like I constantly want to read, I want to learn, I want to better myself, even with the kitchen. But I now know intrinsically and just because of how often I cook, I don't cook with foods I know are not going to be good for me, right? Relatively. I'll go get chocolate and things like that every now and then. But I don't have to think about like that. It's because I just do it day in, day out to the point that my natural selection towards the things that I want to put inside my body are the right things for me. And I know my ratios of like my macros and my micros that I should have. But it's just so important that I look at this in a way it's fun because that's how I know the play part is how I'm going to repeat and want to continue. It's okay to fail, guys. It's okay to fail. Just you fail more by not coming back to it. It's like everything.
If you know me, you know that I like to look good and feel good. As an endurance athlete who trains daily, I need my wardrobe to fit the mold. Roan creates performance-driven clothing for your active lifestyle. Each piece is designed for versatility and made with integrity to outfit you for an active life lived on your own terms. The Roan promise is to help you move forever forward. Use code MILE40 for 20% off online and in-store for new customers only. Visit www.rhone.com, that's Rhone spelled RHONE, or find your local store and move forever forward starting today. I mean, one of the things that's abundantly clear, especially most recently, is you are having a lot of fun with this. And I think, by projecting that, people see that and people want to get in on the fun. And it's one of those things where they see it and they see the joy that it brings you. And, you and I were joking around before this, but watching you makes me want to cook. And I am, not a cook. And just kind of seeing the joy that it brings you and the joy that it brings the people that you're bringing in to your home and whose homes you are going into and to the community that you're cultivating. And so, you're doing an amazing job with that. And it kind of leads me to want to ask you, what are some of your sources of inspiration, or who are some of your sources of inspiration? Because I look at you and I see a jack of all trades. I see, a killer athlete. I see somebody who's incredible at their craft and really distinguished in their craft. And I see someone who's, universally liked, across continents. So you're not just resonating here in New York, but of course back home and in other parts of the world too. So, who are some of the people that, were inspirational to you growing up?
Yeah, for sure, man. I look, before I answer that question, I also want to preface that you don't have to be cooking some elaborate meal to be just being really intentional, having fun with your food. And as an example, as a case in point, Bishoy, do you make grilled cheeses?
I've dabbled.
Right. So, like, everyone listening, I am sure, has had a grilled cheese in their life, or is like, whether it be in college or, lazy Friday night, whatever it is, just like, all I feel like is it's like, it's a just January and cold, and just want a grilled cheese, maybe with a bit of tomato soup or whatever it is. My point is, that is not a meal that you're like, oh, extravagant. But what does it do? It's nostalgic, it's delicious, and it brings out so much fun. So, the reason why I bring that up is despite me being a professional chef, that's the kind of shit I also want people to be intentional about. So, make the best grilled cheese you can. Like the little details of things can make so much more fun. Like when you are toasting the bread in the pan, make sure it's nice and flat. Move it around. Like get all the surface area golden and then flip it over the right time. And then if you make a tomato soup, learn how to season, because I teach you how to season in the book. And so like there's all these kind of things you can think about. It doesn't have to be the most elaborate, expensive meal to cook. It just means whenever you're cooking, be intentional with it, because each dish has techniques you can apply to something else to make it more fun. If you're basting a chicken or a fish and a friend walks in with you basting a fish or a chicken, they're gonna be like, "Holy shit, Bishoy's a baller," and you're gonna be like, "I learned this technique from Dan, and I guess I'm learning a couple things." And what are you gonna do? You're gonna feel good about yourself. You're also gonna feel a little more confident. You're getting the reps in. So like, it's not. I don't want people to feel like, oh, I have to be doing all this elaborate shit to be a good cook. No, make a fucking awesome grilled cheese. So who am I inspired by? So I started cooking because my family and I once a week would watch this show on Australia's TV, like ABC, which is our our public, I guess, programming from our government. His name's Jamie Oliver. You may have heard of him. Some people in the US haven't heard of him yet, but Jamie Oliver is my inspiration. I also am a massive fan of Tom Brady. So my goals personally are to shake Jamie Oliver's hand and Tom Brady's, right? They're two people I've always looked up to. Why? Jamie, I just love the way that he's so relatable in the kitchen. I love the way that he makes food fun, infectious, and approachable. Tom, I just love that he was picked 199 and was like, I'm the best quarterback this organization's ever had, and defied the odds, because like a lot of people, I've had to do that my whole life. Like it's an incredible story. You back yourself. This is more on the personal development journey side, but yeah, I think I look up to those guys immensely.
No, I appreciate that, and thank you for segueing for me, because I knew I had to get there somehow. So now let's talk about that, right? The up against the odds, and about your journey there, and um, again, on the outside, and we're all the same here, right? Like a lot of times we are on social media and we see the highlight reels, but we don't realize, you know, you don't just wake up one day and do the things that you're doing or that I'm doing, or there's a lot of work that goes into that, and behind that work is usually a learning moment or two, and some of them are more difficult than others. And so why don't you walk us through that journey a little bit, and some of the speed bumps that you hit along the way.
Oh, dude, I hit a speed bump. Honestly, like I feel like the freeway is constantly under construction, because that's how often I hit a speed bump. Like everyone, it's how you deal with those speed bumps. But I reckon the first couple in the country, when I landed here in the US 8 years ago, I came from the comfort of the home, the beaches of Australia. I was relatively known to, no one knew me here, didn't have any friends. I didn't really have a source of income other than my existing contract with publishers. And ultimately, my book, because no one knew me, didn't do well. So that was a massive kick in the pants, right? I had to, one, check my ego, learn that I'm in a different country, and honestly also learn how to speak to an audience that, despite being another English speaking nation, Australia is pretty different to America. Like I couldn't be doing the same things I was doing in Australia and expect the same results in America. Like America is a massive place. It's huge and it's awesome. I love it here. I was fortunately educated through the means of American Pie, Van Wilder, and all these forms of movies in the early 2000s that really made me understand the culture of America. But that hit me hard, man. So that was a massive speed bump for me, because that was going to be, the book was meant to be a big launchpad moment for me. And whilst I got here with it, I was grateful, got me the visa. I had to kind of reevaluate where I was at. I wasn't down in the dumps, but I had to reevaluate my success going forward. So that was part one, failure. with the book. Number two, I had started to work at a restaurant or a concept in the city that for 3 months I was putting work into, that eventually had to stop me being involved because they purely were not doing well financially. The place didn't open on time. So effectively they faced a lot of problems. I started building out menus, doing all the consultancy work. And I'd been doing this for like, 3.5 months without being paid, knowing I was going to get paid. But I was, essentially had an email come through saying, hey, Dan, we no longer can afford your services. And I'm like, cool, well, can you at least pay me the money that I was due? And we've all had those moments, like there's always like riffraff. But that was like, the benefit to this is I'm young. I have no other responsibilities other than myself. So that's why I looked at it. I'm like, cool, this is terrible, but at least it's just me, right? So then what I did was I got out of my lease, slept on a couch for about 2 weeks. And then, but within a day of that email, I was like, here we go again. What's next? So I decided to think about like what that would look like. Like I sat down, I assessed what I was doing, and I had a look at the opportunities that lie ahead. And my old man said to me pretty early on, is like, Dan, if this is partly true, but he said, if you want to get something done, do it yourself, right? And we've all heard something similar along those lines of that saying. And that's important for people to know, is like, yeah, like no one's going to care about you as much as you do. Like if you want something done professionally, you got to do it yourself. So I realized pretty quickly, I'm like, okay, well, I can't wait around for anything. So I just decided to put ideas out there to myself and then put things into action, whether it be working in a restaurant or creating events or more content that would lead to certain things. And I just knuckled down. And so for the next year and a half, I did that. Eventually, I was able to, make a base amount of money. And I opened up a restaurant called Charlie Street in Oneida. And that was an amazing experience. And then COVID happened. So that's another barrier, right? Like in between all the barriers of opening a restaurant in New York City alone. So like open for 2.5 years, was doing pretty well. COVID, like shit. Okay. So that kind of like, I'll just let that one, I let that one marinate.
When did it open officially?
We opened
Like around.
We opened in 2017 and 2018. 2018.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So you're open for a little bit and then COVID hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really tough, man. That was a really tough pill to swallow because you built this community. You really built this community, and like you
Yeah, I
realize,
remember Charlie Street. Yeah,
right?
I remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, you see your friends there, and all of a sudden you don't see your friends there. And not only that, like your team who you're supporting financially, you can no longer support financially. So then you have that aspect. You have people calling and texting, and you're like, oh, like, you know what I mean? It's really, really tough. That was just another like kick in the pants. And to be honest, I'm grateful because it's easy to say that now, but I'm also like, I like, there's so many people who are in worse off positions than I were in that situation. People lost their lives. So I'm not in any position to complain. I learn a lot from that. I learn a lot about myself, and I'm really happy where I'm at as a result of it. But I think that's the thing about all these learnings, isn't it, though, dude? Like you learn
Yeah.
so much about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but one of the things that stood out about that whole story was it never sounded like the idea of walking away was an option. Uh, and so, that's one thing that's clear. And I think that's a testimony to what the work meant to you. And that, I tell people that like, you have to expect to fail. Like, failure has to be part of the process. And if it's not, then you're probably not trying hard enough. And so it's clear that, you kind of were in line with that mentality. Because, you're not the first person who's come on this show to talk about a business, shuttering during COVID. We had Eric Posner from Swerve come on and talked about what he went through, just as one example amongst others, and how he had to pivot, immediately. And one of the things that he brought up, which you kind of alluded to, was he talks about how a mentor of his, pulled him aside and said, like, Eric, what's the worst case scenario? The business goes under. Then what's the worst case scenario? I have a couch to sleep on. I have family. I have friends. Like, the worst case scenario is never as bad as sometimes we make it out to be. But it takes a certain mindset to kind of think through that instinctively in the darkest moments. I'm interested now. So after that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but after that, how did we get to the Osprey and where we are today?
Yeah, dude, like the option to never quit, yeah, it's not there. Like I remember my manager at the time called me. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna get you to come home to Australia." I'm like, "No, absolutely not. Like, it's just not happening." No matter how hard, it's like I'm here. If I leave the energy. I don't want to go, so I'll find a way. Always will. Um, so essentially, what's going on is like we kept Charlie Street was open still, but I had at that point I'd been doing so much content around nutrition, chefing, food, performance that I built a pretty decent digital platform and following. I'm working with some companies on the regular, Center being one of them, Athletic Greens or AG1 now. So I'm working with these companies on a regular basis to help support their growth and my mission. And then I got put in touch with One Hotels, and which is an amazing hotel group, very forward thinking, sustainable, and they were looking for something, and it was like 2 year process, but eventually we landed on this concept together. But they had been, this is like perfect example of personal branding and being consistent and being true to your values. For so long, I didn't shy away from my values and my personal brand. And eventually, what happens is you do something for long enough, it's going to draw the attention of someone, which brings you an opportunity, which is exactly what I did. I kept talking about something that was repeatable, like habitual, all those kind of things. People knew me for my performance and health based food resources. Over time, people started seeing me in my chef abilities, and you just stay true to that. And over time, what happens is opportunities keep coming. As much as the hard slog at the start, people like everyone's like, how do this is the funniest part for sure. I'll say it's like, Dan, how do I get a social following? How do I, like, how do I do this? Like, how do I cook? It all comes down to the same principle. Put the work in, get the reps in, and be okay with playing the long game. Because the opportunities will come if you are truly passionate about something, because you will do it enough to put out the right message consistently so that someone who is interested in working with someone like you will see it. They call it luck. I call it where opportunity intersects preparedness. And we've all heard that saying before. An opportunity came with One Hotels who kept seeing my work consistently, and that intersected preparedness. A similar situation happened when at the time I was working with um, Under Armour as their chef and working with a couple of athletes like Lindsey Vonn. The reason why they approached me was because I kept putting up so much content and SEO my content through my website and everything I was doing, that when they looked up healthy chef, I was the first one, the only one on the first page of Google. So they didn't even approach anyone else. So they just came straight to me. And that was a huge reflection about like how important it is to, and that took years, right? Like, but stay true to who you are, be okay with being patient and just chipping away at that rock until the thousandth chip finally breaks that rock. It's not the last one, it's all thousand of those chips that breaks that rock.
Yeah, man, beautifully said. I mean, the first step is always the hardest step, but then once you take that step, then it becomes around, embracing the mindset of, all right, you're going to take a couple more steps, but you got the hardest one out of the way, and just anticipate that you still might trip. Like it's likely that you're going to trip, but that's not a reason to either turn around or to stop walking at that point. Like, just, foot forward, keep going, march on, and the results will come. And I think that was, really beautifully said. um, I want to make sure that, as we round things out, that, I touch on everything that's important to you, especially with your upcoming book. I know that's really exciting for you. And I can relate to this, right? Like, even though it's not your first, every single time you put a new project out there into the world, there's a certain, butterfly in your stomach around the fact that, is it going to land? Is it going to accomplish? And I don't think about it in terms of book sales, but I just think about, like, is it going to get in the right hands? Is it going to, leave the impression that I was hoping it was going to leave? And is it going to help me fulfill my mission? So I want to quickly give you the floor really quick. Is there anything else, leading up to the official launch that's top of mind for you, or anything that you want to put out there?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Look, Eat Like a Legend is. Hang on, have I got it here? Hang on a second. I don't know if people are going to be watching this podcast, but for the sake if they are, Eat Like a Legend, this one right here, is a book that it's probably its most proud book or project I've ever done. Right, because it's been so intentional for everything to come to fruition to be here right now. It's your point. It's not the book sales. It's the amount of hands that it can change and impact. It's the amount of people that will say after this, "Hey, I'm putting myself first." It's like, yes, obviously the ability to cook an amazing grilled cheese, but it's more about the ability for you to walk away with confidence and learn that you don't have to be an athlete to want to get the best out of your performance. And then, you never know. Like, the idea is, yes, you will also learn about the right foods and all the stories behind that. But I've talked a lot about nutrition, and in there you'll learn about what I call the 5 macros. It's not just the 3 of the mains that we know about, or the 4th one being water. There's a 5th macronutrient I talk about that will really understand how you should be looking at what you put in your body. But dude, this book is, from the title of Eat Like a Legend, is being put forward in a way to relate to everybody, to truly reflect on themselves, is, how am I looking after me? And by getting this book, it's the first step to saying, I'm putting myself first. For $35, you're putting yourself first. I will say this, right now it is out for pre-order. And if you pre-order, the sooner you pre-order, you get access to all these incentives that you and I were talking about earlier. Like, when you're doing a pre-order, people are less inclined to buy the book until it comes out, because of Amazon being so quick with our, ability to get something next day. But what you can do is incentivize people by, you run the draw to win a Breville coffee machine, a 2-night stay at One Hotels, a bunch of other things like AG1 and Whoop. And the longer you wait, the less time you have involved in those potential prizes. So if you want to, head to the link that I have on my bio in my Instagram and pre-order the book. Let me know about it, because I'd love to tag you in the post too. And Bishoy, I can't wait to see you cook it from it, my dude.
I love it, my man. I love it, my man. Stay tuned, everybody. I'm bringing Dan over. We're gonna work on something special and get it out there. And before we close up, me and you, I'm gonna grab that link from you to make sure to put it in the show notes. But I just want to say thanks, man. Thanks from the bottom of my heart for making this happen. For just two boys coming on here chatting, and really pushing forward a positive message. And I'm deeply appreciative of the vulnerability, the authenticity. Again, like I said, man, people see this from the outside and they think you are just born a chef out of the womb, an athlete just crushing these races. But it's just a reminder that taking that first step, accepting failure, understanding that, even someone like Dan out here talks about the fact that he's failed a time or two, and some of them pretty significant. And so, to round things out, thank you, brother. I really appreciate it.
Bishoy, as I said, when we first met, it was an absolute pleasure. And thank you for making me feel so, just happy, bro. People like you light up my night, so I appreciate you, dude.